As usual, disclaimer. I'm recording this video. It's a disclaimer. So just be aware that I'm recording the video. So whatever you're saying, or whatever you do, keep that in mind that it could be in your recording. So just a disclaimer. Yeah, so let me share my screen. Before I proceed, I'm hoping that everyone was able to authenticate and everyone was able to clone from my repo from anywhere. Because
to be honest, I haven't, because I was so busy. I tried it on that night because I was having an issue the day before, but I can go past that and focus on it on Saturday because I'm trying to take out Saturday to get caught up on everything.
Yeah. Now, exactly. Now we only have Tuesday and Thursday, right? So you can take the entire weekend, Thursday night, whatever, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to just catch up, rewatch the videos, The videos are pretty slow paced, so you should be fine just following along and just doing it. And even the questions are important. I tried doing some editing, but I discovered that even the questions are important. So I don't need to do much editing to the videos besides maybe taking out a break and things like that. So anyway, so let's go ahead. We're gonna get right to business today. So we all know what Git does. We've talked about it. We've talked about how you have your working directory in Git, which is usually in your local machine. You have your working copy, and then you have to stage your working copy. And when you stage it, it goes into your staging area, right? And to know if something is in your staging area, you run Git status, which we're going to go through, and you see how that works. Once it's staged, now there's two things. You can either move it back to your working directory by resetting the head, or you can push it to your local directory by committing it. Once you commit it, it moves from your staging to your local repository. And then this is where you push it to your remote repository. So that's basically how the flow of Git, if you will. And we're going to go in there and do some, deep dive. So I know we did this yesterday, so I'm just, hoping. So if you did this yesterday on your Git, and then if you run this command, if you did that, and then if you run git config -- list, can you see that, my screen?
Yeah, we can.
You should see your username and your email displayed to the screen, and you can verify.
It gives me a lot more than that, but yeah, it also shows me the email.
Yeah, and then you're good to go. So anyway, that's just something to check. If you don't have anything, if you type that you don't get anything, it means you did not run this command that we ran yesterday. So you definitely need to rerun this. Anyway, so in our Git repository, if you're working on your local machine and you want to, let's say, initialize or create a Git file or Git document that's already been initialized pretty much, which means that this file is tracked by Git. To do that in your machine, you use a command called git init. So init essentially stands for you initializing. So you're starting. So anyway, what I'm going to do is that this is my regular directory, and I'm working on an Ubuntu system, as you can tell from the system, and I'm the Ubuntu user. So I'm going to use a lot of sudo. So if I type git init, I have to specify a directory. If I specify a directory, let's say I say git init DevOps, what I'm expecting is Git to initialize a directory called DevOps. And if I ls, I can see that there's a DevOps. I know my directories are kind of thick blue, but if you look here, there's a DevOps directory here that was created by Git. So if I cd into that DevOps directory and I hit git status, you see that this directory is automatically tracked by Git. You can see on the branch, it's saying that I'm on a master branch, which we're going to talk about branching in the last part of class. but on the master branch, no commits yet. There's nothing to commit, essentially. So this is just an empty working directory that you have with Git. And then that's essentially what Git init does. If you had another directory, or if you just said Git init, Git would say that if it's not in the directory, it's going to tell you that it needs to be in a directory. But fortunately for us, every program lives in some kind of a directory. So if you initialize any directory, that directory automatically starts getting tracked by Git. So it's essentially a Git repository once you initialize. So keep that in mind, but you really won't have to use Git init. I personally, my company, I haven't really initialized any repositories at all. Usually I just come with what they have and I work with them, or I can just go and create one, pull it to my machine, clone it to my machine, work on it and push it back. So pretty much what I do. So it's just to keep in mind. And then we have our famous git add command. So your git add command is when you want to add your file to staging. There's one thing that I want you to keep in mind, which I might open that in another page. I'll close by, give me a second, I'll open that. Because it's important that we have these pictures ahead of us. So remember this, we have a working right here. We have a staging and we have a local. So if I run git add, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to move my file from this working copy to the staging area. That's pretty much what I want to do. I want to promote it. So I want to stage to this area. So I use git add. So that's it. So anyway, so I'm going to demonstrate right here. So I'll create a file, any file, I'm just echoing something to a file, I'm just sending this to a file so I could use that file. Text, I'm calling that file text.txt. Right, so now what is supposed to happen is I'm supposed to have a file here. You see a file called text.txt. When I hit git stages, you see what Git is telling me. Git is telling me that there's an untracked file. And what's the name of that file? Text.txt. And for me to promote that file to the staging area, I need to git add the name of that file. So git add the name of that file, which is text.txt. Oh, it's test. So git add the name of that file. So now I go back to git stages. Remember, git stages will be one of the best commands. I personally use it a lot because it kind of helps you differentiate what's tracked, what's not, so you can know how your files are being tracked. So now when I hit git stages, now the changes to, it tells me that there's changes to be committed. So now we went from red right here to green, which is telling me now it's in the staging area. So Git now has this file in possession. Now Git can, can promote it to the next stage. So now we have our Git file now telling us that, okay, now Git is being tracked. Remember, after running this command git add, what I simply did was, what's that file? I simply promoted that file from
working to staging.
From working to staging, essentially. That's what it is. Just keep that in your mind because these are stages that you won't see when you're working, but it's what's happening in the background. And it's, once you pick up these concepts, it's very important that you have this concept. Because once you have this concept, now you know how to move between files. If you have issues while committing and things like that, you know how to work with them. So now I want to promote this file. And the next stage will be to promote this file to our actual, local repository or database, if you will. So now we have our command. The next command is a git commit. Normally, if you just type git commit, you see what's going to happen? It's going to open you a commit file where you could write your commit message. And it's going to bring your default editor, which mine is Nano. I don't like Nano. So I usually bypass this. Instead of running git commit and then having a file where I could put my commit message in it, I usually just run the one which is git commit -m, which my M is saying that this is a message. This is my commit message. First commit, essentially. The commit message is important because whenever someone goes online and looks at your file, the changes you've done, whatever change you did, this first commit is going to be attached to that change. So it's important that you write something meaningful. If let's say you worked on a checkout problem, make sure your commit says fixing a checkout problem, kind of like that. So you automatically communicate with everyone on what you're working on. So that's why the commit messaging is so important, and you have to give it when you commit. So anyway, git commit as m, and you see now it's telling me that one file was changed, one file was inserted. Remember, this was inserted to my local machine. So if I say, okay, git status, you can see I'm back to a clean working directory, right? But if you ls, the test file is still there. If I say git status is empty. So now, let's go back real quick. So now my file is telling me that it moved here to here and then moved from here to here. So now this is empty, this is empty. I say nothing is tracked. Everything has been committed to this local repository. And this is where we can now push it to the remote repository. So that's essentially what happens with Git. And that's the major commands that you use back and forth when you're using Git. And then we'll go to some of the useful ones. So that's the Git commit for you. And obviously we have a nice commit here called Git difference. And if you make a change to a file, this is a command that's going to tell you that this file has been changed versus this file. If you don't want to commit the file, if you don't want to add the file, commit, and then see the changes that gets done, you can use git diff, and git diff will tell you the difference. Let me illustrate that real quick. So we have our file. Let me cut that file, our test file. You see our file has, this is a DevOps class. I'm going to send something else. I'm going to add something to the next line of that file. And then instead of appending, remember, when we did Linux, I'm going to keep reminding you when you're learning Linux, the commands that we've done before in Linux, we still use them across. You start to see how I'm using Linux, even though I'm working with Git. Yeah, that's why Linux is so important. That's why I keep telling you, you go back and make sure you practice Linux, the basic commands. Now, remember I told you, when you use the one, just the one you're redirecting is going to replace the old file. But if you use two, you're appending it to the next line, pretty much. So that's the difference. So keep that in mind. So if I cut test, I'll see that now we have two files. You see the next one went to the next line. So now let's run git status again and see what this says. It's telling us that there's one file that's modified. Git is track everything. That's why Git is so important. It tracks everything. So now let's run the git difference. You see? It's telling us I just added this line, it's green, plus. I love the DevOps class. So if you added 500 lines of code, it's going to show you every line of code that you added, the difference between the two files. Because that's essentially what git difference does. So you can do that on your local machine and all that stuff. So this is another short form. This is pretty much staging and committing at the same time. So if you don't know what that means, this is moving a file from working to local and skipping the stage pretty much. That's what this command does. So I will illustrate that real quick. So remember, git commit, the A means I want you to add every file that has not been tracked. So that's the git add. This A stands for the git add or add. And then the M stands for the message. So this bundles everything in one. So I'll go back again and I'll illustrate that as usual. I go git status and we see there's a file here that's been modified. So what I'm trying to do is I want to take this modified file, I want to push it directly to a local repository. So when I'm done, I'm not just looking for green, but I'm looking for full clean working directory. So when I'm done, when I hit git status, it's going to tell me that you have a clean working directory. So the way we do that is git commit -a to add the on-track files, which in this case would be the modified txt.txt, and then M for the commit message, and I'm just going to say second commit. You see, now if I hit git status, what I'm expecting is for you to say that I have a clean working directory. There we go. So you pretty much do two steps in one, and trust me, Linux and everything, there's stages where you just want to, skip to the next stage, and this is how you do it. So that's it. Just keep these commands in mind, because this is basically the heart of Git. We're gonna have some other fancy commands in Git that you can use, but this is the heart to interact, to change, to push files, to make. That is it about Git. What we've learned right now you could pretty much take these and be able to work with Git. But now when it comes to troubleshooting and things like that, that's when you need to learn other commands. But Git is not supposed to be that complicated. So you see this is an example, and that file has been committed. So I guess this is a good question. You know, I was going through when I was doing the slides and researching, you know, slides to use and information. You know, I always come across this, and this was a good question. Why a file is both staged and on stage? You know, the problem is a file is staged and on stage when you stage that file and then made more changes to that same file that you already staged. So now you have the same file that's staged and it's both staged and on stage. So obviously we need to learn how to remove some certain things from Git. So if you, for example, you know, we have two ways to remove a file. Our regular remove from Linux, rm, and then the file name. It will remove a file, but guess what? It's going to remove the file, but it's not going to remove it from Git. So if you use remove and then remove the file, you're still going to see that file being tracked by Git, especially if you already staged that file. If you use Git remove, so if you add the Git before the remove, it's going to move that file from the local and it's also going to remove it from staging pretty much. So that's a big difference. So now the difference from the Git remove and the remove is from removing from staging or just removing from your local. You want both. So both is Git remove and just the regular remove is just removing it from your local. It still be tracked. So this is to remove a file from Git repository, but not from the system. That's why you can cache it pretty much, or you can just use it. So you can also force, and be careful when you keep using forcing removers, because sometimes you want to remove a file, it gives you an error. You can force the remover with /f, and there you go. So I'm going to illustrate the Git remove. So Git remove, Git rm, I'm going to remove our test file. So you see, when I hit Git status, it tells me that the file has been deleted, right? It tells me that the file has been deleted. If I look at my local directory, there's nothing. The file is gone. Let me clear my screen real quick. You look ls and the file is gone. So Git remove removed it from my local repository and you moved it from my local, just like we discussed. So your file is gone. So be careful when you're using Git remove. You know, be careful. If I had a file, if I had another file, I just did a new file. If I had this file in my machine, and let's say I added it, as I say git add, and I use the dot to add that file. Now you see that file has been tracked. Let's say I use a regular remove. Let's see what happens when I use a regular remove to remove that file. You see that? I still have my file here, but it's been deleted on my local. So if I go ahead and commit this file, who can tell me what will happen if I committed this file? If I use git commit, because I deleted the file from my local machine. What's going to happen if I commit the file? Just a wild guess, class.
I think it's still going to be there since it is in the, it is not in the local, but it's in the, what is the other one called?
The staging area.
Yeah, the staging, well, yeah, you can retrieve it.
How do you retrieve it? Well, you don't, yeah, I know you don't know. I'm just messing with you, bro. So essentially, the only way that I can make sure that this file is been deleted, once I delete that file from my local, you know, to be able to make sure that the staging area knows that this file has been deleted, I have to add that deletion again. And when I add that deletion again, now you see now that it knows that the file has been deleted. You see the trick? So that's how you're moving from stage to stage. But anyways, yeah, that's just one of the little tricks. When I add that file, it knows that it's been deleted, right? And if I git, and another command that you can use is git reset head, and then you put the name of the file. And what's happening now is, can someone guess what happened? I'm gonna run the git status. When you reset, what you're doing is you're taking a file from staging back to the local repository. That's what reset does. So keep in mind, we're going to have the video here. When you come to this part of the video, git reset head and the name of the file. What you're saying is every change that I added with git add, I want you to remove it, pretty much. I want you to unstage, right? Felix, you get it now? To unstage a file, pretty much. This is a command you use, you reset. Yep. You turn the file, you're no longer, taking you out of stage, pretty much. You're no longer the guy. So this is another concept that we'll cover. And I want us to do all this on this UI, see how it works. You can go watch the videos, and then we'll do some more using our remote repository, obviously. And then when we're done, I'm going to show you now how using the IDE, which you downloaded, the VS Code, can make your life pretty easy. Can make things more visible, pretty much, if you will. Anyway, so ignoring files. There's this file called git ignore that you create, and you pretty much ignore every file. So I'll kind of show you what it looks like. So this is you basically any git ignore file is you can run this command, or you could just create a file by yourself. And once you create a file and you stage that file, you just start tracking your repository pretty much. So start tracking your repository pretty much. So let me do, for example, we're in a GitHub repository. This is completely empty. So I'm going to create one file. Just give me a second. All right, sorry about that, class. I had to open the door. Someone. So we have one file, and I'll just do another one. This time I'll change the name. So we should have two files. So with git ignore, what's happening is, let's say this one, I don't want text.txt to be committed. So whatever I'm doing on my machine, I want to make sure that each time I use git add, git commit, and all that stuff, I don't want this file to be part of the committed file. That's when you can create something we call the git ignore, which I'm just going to go ahead and create it right here with VR. So for example, I'm just creating a git ignore file. And when I create, I just open it directly. So that's just my create. So I'm just going to say our current directory, I don't want text.txt to ever be part of a push. So now, with my git stages, sometimes when you create a git ignore, your git ignore might still be tracking, might forget some files that were there before it got created. So just keep that. So sometimes you're gonna have to git remove the cache, and then you have to redo it to get it done. But anyway, so that's what essentially happens. So I'll put git add. So anyway, so this, for example, one file got modified, and one file got added. So what's going to happen is, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure that a file like this, text file, doesn't get committed on my next commit, pretty much. So you add that in what we call a .git ignore file. I'm going to cut that file. And this file is supposed to have every file that you don't want it committed. So like I mentioned, some cases when you create a git ignore, you have to clean up, like git remove, dash cache and things like that, and then once you have your git ignore now, it's going to be able to start picking up fresh files, because this files was, since it's a git repository, you always started tracking it, and it's already keeping an eye. So anyway, so that's essentially what the git ignore does to your repository. It tracks, it makes sure that files that you don't want to go into your repository, you don't want to go in public when you push, they get ignored pretty much. That's what it is. Any question? Any question, class? Feel free to ask me before we proceed. Hello?
No question on my end.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Same over here, no questions.
Yeah, that's why you see Git ignore as you start working on projects, you see Git ignore because sometimes not everything that you're working on that you want it pushed. So you pretty much start seeing Git ignore. So when you see Git ignore in a file in a project or in a company's code, you know exactly what that's for. So and then this is how you can know the history of your commits, right? It's so easy. Git commands are so straightforward. So if you hit git log, it's going to tell me exactly all what I've been doing. So to illustrate that, you see git log, and this is the first commit. So what it does is the newest commit comes here at the top. And then at the bottom, you always see the oldest commit. As you can see, first commit, second commit. So this right here is what we call the commit hash. So with this commit hash, you can be able to revert commits, go back to commits, tag with this, and things like that. So this commit hash is essentially contains all the information of your commit. So you can revert by this we call this in the GitHub world, just keep that in mind. We call this a commit hash. That's what it's called. So that's essentially what git log is. So if you wanted to know commit hash, and your commit history, just hit git log, and that's it. It will tell you all what you've been working on. And then this is another command. It's a fancy one. I really never had to use it, but essentially is what it is. If you wanted to, change your last commit message or something, you just hit git commit -amen, and you open your previous commit message, and you can type a new one, and then that's it. He updates that for you. And then this is tag. So tag is very important. When you're working on code, sometimes you want a way of differentiating that code. For saying that, okay, I wanted to make sure that when I'm working on my staging environment, I want to have a tag that is a higher tag. When you're working on production, obviously, your tag is going to be a lower tag. Production could be at 18.0, while your staging is at maybe 18.1 or 18.2 or 18.3, depending on how many commits are coming. So that tagging is what's going to make sure that you're keeping a specific version of your code. So you could tag that code. And once you tag that code, you can always pull out that tag anytime. So it's as easy. So tagging your code is as easy as, and ignore these double dashes, as it's just one. So I'm just going to say this now in case you're watching the video. It's -A, it's not -A, and it's -M. I don't think it's -M. I've never really had to use double. As you can see right here, down here. So you can tag. So what I'm going to do now is the same commit that we just had. I'm going to try to tag. I'm going to tag that commit. I'm going to call it version 1.0.1. And then the message, obviously your commit message. So now your commit, so everything you have in your system right now, in your local repository has been tagged. So now you can list your tag. So this is so now I'm just being lazy. So I'm just looking for that command where you can list your tag. Oh, is this easy? So that's it. So that's the command. So to see your tags, you just hit git tag -list. So it's just going to tell you. So now we only have one tag. If you had multiple tags, this is where you see. We have our version 1.0.1. So we can always commit this version and make sure that your application is always versioned. So version is very important. So you have to keep that in mind. The way you can easily separate, I'll give you an example. I'm building our Terraform repository right now. And I'm building the Terraform modules, and I'm building the applications that are using those modules. So the way schedule those modules is each time I make a change on one module, I version it. So my first change is version 1.0.1. When I make another change, now it's probably going to be version 1.0.2. So what happens is each change that I make, I tag it. So let's say I discover that there's an issue with, let's say, version 1.0.1 or version 1.0.2. What I can do is I can go back to my applications and start telling them, I want you to only use version 1.0.1 because version 2 has an issue, right? So you start to see how you can have different versions and avoid problems. And then when you fix version 2, now you name the fix version 1.1, or you could say version 1.2 or 1.0.3. So you know your version 3 is a fix. Now you can come back to your application and change from version 1.0.1 to version 1.0.3. And now they're using the new version. So that's the concept of version. You keep that in mind, when you're working with version, because as DevOps engineer, version is very important. Even the releases that you do, there's have to be version releases. And they usually start from GitHub. The versions of GitHub usually get propagated all the way to production, pretty much.
I have a quick question, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you kind of explained it at the end, but from my understanding, I think when you're running code, don't you just run one version of the code?
Yeah, you're running one version of the code, but usually when you're running one version, there's usually multiple versions. There's the old version, and there's a version before the old version and all that,
So my question is, if the version 1.2 is the updated version of version 1.0, version 1.1, why do you need 1.1 if 1.2 is the same thing that's just updated with like all the fixes that you want or upgrades that you wanted to do?
Because you might at some point you might have compatibility issues, right? Some application might be able to use version 1.0.1, fine, while others might not. Just like some applications might be able to use version 1.0.2, while others might not. So why you're keeping it is, and you're also keeping it because what you're doing is you're keeping a record in case something goes wrong, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can always have something to refer back to.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's it. That's tagging. So keep that. I want you to keep that tagging in mind and how you can use it. The way I just talked about, that's how you use tagging. And tagging is very important. You can use tagging, to separate things. And obviously now we're going to talk about, working with remote repositories. We've been, so far I've been working on my local machine here. I've just been doing changes. But now we want to connect the dot because, as an engineer, you're not just going to be working on a local machine. You also have to be publishing your changes to the public. So your other engineers, your other friends can see it, right? Or your other people you're working with. So how do you connect that link and that dot? I guess that's what we're going to be talking about now. So we already know what a remote repository is, but in case you needed any reminder or whatsoever, this year is essentially 1 developer, 2 developer, 3 developer. When you make your change, you have to push it somewhere. So this guy can know what was recent. This guy can keep up to date. So always make sure you push, when you finish work, you push it to the remote. And then you guys can start, this other guy can be able to see what you've been working on and things like that. So that's essentially what your remote repository is. I know yesterday we did this, so that's good. We signed up with GitHub. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go on our online repository and we're going to create the repository manually, pretty much. So anyway, so if you want to follow me, you can follow me. If you want to watch the video, you can watch the video. But what I'm expecting is, to follow me, you have to have your repository open. The one you created yesterday, sorry, your account, your GitHub account. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to create a repository real quick on my account. So let's see. So this is my account that I created yesterday. So for you to create a repository, so if you, for someone like, if you go to your repositories, you probably see nothing, right? When you click on repositories, you see nothing if you haven't created anything. I created a test 2 hours ago, but this is essentially what we're trying to achieve. To create a repository, you can create it here. You can, you can check, you can create here, you can click here, and then take new repository. You can open repositories and take new here, or no, however you want to do it. And you create a new repository, and this is the repository name. Remember, your repository name has to be unique in your current account, GitHub account. So now that I already have test repo, I can create another test repo. So now remember, each repository has to be unique from any other repository that you have currently in repository. So this one, I'm going to call this DevOps class. And that's how you create a repo online. So if you wanted to follow, and then you have public. I'm going to take public just because, this is how you can enable your classmates, your teammates to see. And most companies, they have private repositories. And when you have a private repository, you have to give people access to it. So that makes it really different. And then I'm going to add my fancy README. And you see, you can even add a git ignore right here on your local. So I'm just going to ignore that. And I just hit create repository. Is that easy? You see, I already have my repository and I have my README here. My demo, that's how you create a repository. It's that easy. And now we're going to talk about how we can start pushing changes to this repository. So was anybody able to try that?
Yeah, I followed along.
Oh, awesome. So you should have your repository ready. These are the steps here. In case you didn't follow along, when you're watching this video, remember the steps are in the slides, and the slides are underneath the video, on the video descriptions. You're going to see the slides. So if you're watching this video, you can follow the slides and you can see this page where it's going step by step and it's telling you how to create it. But usually take one step. So, and then our next command is, we're trying to add our remote repository. But usually what I like to do is, even though the repository belongs to me, I just like to always clone my repository, right? So that's what I've always done. I'm I get stuck in my ways. I just clone every repository. You can clone your repository. You can clone another person's repository, and you can clone, a company's repository. But with Git add, you can only add something that you have access to pretty much, because that's where you're going to be pushing your code. So I'm going to go ahead and run the git add remote origin command. So if you want to run this command, you have to make sure that you have this file. You come here, you click on code, you take HTTPS and you copy your Git code, your Git repository link right here, copy it. So now that you have that, I'm going to exit out of this Git repository. Make sure that you're in a wide open space where there's no Git repository already running. And then git add remote origin. So we're gonna error.
There's not a Git repository on my end. Same like you.
Oh yeah. So you're gonna have to do a git create. Okay, if you don't want to mess up your current directory, you could currently quickly make directory. So make the DevOps class, or whatever you want to call it. City into DevOps class. Oh, you don't have to do that. You can just git init DevOps class or DevOps, or however you want to name your.
Excuse me, one step back. When you went to that code, what did you do? You said go to HTTPS and then do what?
You click here on this code.
Yes.
Then you just copy.
Okay.
So when do we use git bash and when do we use the like for me on Windows, what's the, like I would use the Windows, the shell,
Trust
What's the
me.
difference between, so Windows PowerShell or git bash? I've been using Windows PowerShell, right?
Well, if you want to do mostly Git, right, just use git bash. But PowerShell kind of encapsulates the entire machine. So you can control the entire machine. But with git bash, you're only doing Git related stuff. And I'm sure with git bash, you can easily run the CD and all that stuff, right? Can you?
What's that?
Can you run the CD, make D on a git bash?
Yeah.
Exactly. So you're good. You don't have to worry about it then. So git add, let me try now. This has been initialized. So I'll add the remote origin again. And now it's telling me that it did not match So what it's telling me is your remote did not match any file. So when you're adding your origin, that's why I tell you, I always clone all my repository, because when you're adding an origin, what you're trying to do is you're trying to let Git know that this current directory that I'm working in, it has related files to the directory online, right? I just want to be able to push through it pretty much. So this directory, I have all the files, and this directory is directly associated to the other directory. And now all I want to do is I want to push to it pretty much. And I want the permission to push to it. That's why, so with a command like this, normally I would cd ... to my current, and I'll do, like I mentioned before, I'll clone this repository. I do this, that's how I do it. Once you clone it, your origin is already set. So git clone, so there it is. So the same link you copied, Ramesh, Vitali, you could just hit git clone and then paste that link and then enter, and you should clone. And if you type ls, you see that DevOps class is right here. So now, if you notice that when you cd into that new clone directory, you see that your README file is there. If you added a README, if while creating a repository, you didn't add a README, your README file won't be here. So now what we're going to practice, I'll just make sure that the slides doesn't cover this, because if it does, we can just go ahead. But yeah, I hope you're there. I hope you're able to clone your directory that you just created. Otherwise, you can always watch the video. Yeah.
It let me post that code, the link. It lets me post the link into the Windows PowerShell, but when I try to post it into Git Bash, it just types in Control V, like it won't let me paste it in there. Is that weird? Or
So Git Bash won't let you paste pretty much.
yeah, PowerShell lets me paste, but Git Bash just it gives me like an error message for some reason. But
the reason why I don't recommend using PowerShell for Git is because navigating files on PowerShell is different. It's not CD and all that stuff. It's a bunch of different commands. It's not complicated. I think one of them is /D to list your directory and things like that. So PowerShell is different. That's why I recommend using Git Bash. But if you can't paste in Git Bash, that's kind of strange, because you should be able to paste on any. So because it's not expecting you to type the entire thing, right? That's a bit of an overkill. Well, try pasting it. If it's not, and then unfortunately you might, for now, until we diagnose what's wrong, you can just type your HTTPS, and all that stuff.
okay, I'll try that.
Yeah, just try that. We can sort that out later. So now, when you clone and you go in there, and if you hit Git status, you can see that this branch is currently tracked already. You're already tracked. So whatever change you make here, Git is going to keep an eye on it. Just because you cloned the Git repository, you can make changes to it. So we're going to make some changes. So if you cloned your repository, your new repository, what you can do is you can create a directory in there. Or you can create a file. You remember how we create files with Linux? Just touch and then the file.txt or however you want to do it. What there's this site that I use to get information. It's called Hipson. I'll post it in the chat, and I'll post this in the chat. Look at the chat. So this is where I go and I just get like random information. Like now you see, I already generated information from them. I told them I wanted 5 paragraphs of information, and bear me. Automatically pull out 5 paragraphs. But I only need a few information just to show a bit of it. So
It's just random words.
It's random bullshit, yes. It's when you just have, you want, I just want words pretty much. So I'm going to copy this because I need some information from my Git. So in your current directory, I'm just going to touch a file called, hipsum.txt.
And TXT just means it's a text file. That means there's nothing in it other than words, right?
Yeah, and since you're just creating a loop, at the moment it'll be empty.
Oh, okay.
So I'm using my default text editor. I don't know what your text editor is, but if you use VI on the Mac terminal, it should open up a file for you. And we're going to see why this is all complicated, why I was telling you to download VS Code. We'll see that pretty quickly. But anyway, to open that file, you can go vi hipsum.txt, or if you want to do it the old school way, you could find that directory on your Mac using the Finder. And you can use the Mac to create the file, open it with the file editor and type. You'll be easier just opening that file. Remember hitting our I to insert, and then I'll paste all that information that I just copied right there. And then escape, colon, WQ, and exclamation, so I could say write and quit. So now I have information on a file with information. If I type ls, I'll see my file. If I hit git status, git will tell me that I have a file called hipsum that I'm not tracking. So to remember, we need to add that, you put git add and then the name of the file. And another technique that you keep in mind, if you have multiple files, let's say you made changes to 10 to even 10 files, because sometimes you can change 10 different files in the same directory. And sometimes I've even had to change 15, 20, even 40 files, depending on how many files you work on. Instead of adding each file one by one, if you're in the directory where those files are, and you want to add everything in that directory, you put git add and then a dot. You see that? Now what you're telling Git is any file in this directory that I haven't tracked, I want you to put it in staging. And you don't have to type. So I'm a lazy engineer, so that's why you see I always have these little things. So once I hit that, it's going to add everything in that directory. But fortunately for us, we only have one file. So git status, and once you hit git status, you can see that the file has been tracked. And now I want to push that file to my local directory. I want to commit that file. So I'm going to git commit and say first commit. And then there we go. Oops. Oh, I'm missing the first quote. There's a quote missing here. Git commit, and then there we go. My file has been committed. So if I hit git status, it's empty. So now to push to my master branch, to push my changes so everybody else can be able to see it, to push my changes here, here it's as easy as just typing git push origin main, which is our main branch. I used to call it master branch, but ever since the word master became, apparently racist, companies and all that, and they're saying that the master is kind of sounds racist. So if you haven't noticed, when you buy a house now, they don't call the master bedroom, they call it the primary bedroom, right? So people are starting to refrain from the word master. You won't hear a realtor call a master bedroom master, they call it primary. So now, as the same token, even in IT, we used to call this branch a master branch, the main branch, but now everybody's now calling it, GitLab started calling it main. And now you can, I think I noticed today, was it today? I didn't even know that GitHub is starting to call it main. So keep that in mind. So anyway, now that I want to commit, it's asking me my username. I'm just going to go in real quick and look for what my username is. This is my username, Linus Seno. So I'm going to enter that in. And then it's going to ask you for your password. I hope you remember your password. So now it looks like we're going to have to do some troubleshooting, but this is fine. So now it's telling us that the support for password authentication was removed on August 13, 2021. So this obviously this is 4 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago. They removed the password support because if you think about the password, it's not too safe. Usually what I use an SSH key pair that I use to authenticate my account. I use a key pair, but they're saying that you can use a token, a personal access token instead. And now I can show you how to create a personal access token because I've done that before. And what happens is once you create your personal access token, when you ask for your password, then you just insert your token pretty much. That's my experience. But eventually I'll show you how to use an SSH key. It's much better. But anyway, you come to general, blocking my way. Settings, and I'm looking for access token, where I can create my access token. So I'll come look at, there's a few things I can look at. I can look at here, the SSH. And we have, this is where I would add my SSH key if I created one. And it's so easy to create an SSH key. I can actually show you right now how to create an SSH key. It's easy. And then, but I'm looking to create a, let's go to the developer settings. Personal access token. This is what I'm looking to create. So now, if you weren't following along, you can always follow the video, but I'm generating an access token. You see, it's going to ask my password. And remember, never show your access token in anybody. So now, this is what happens. Once you get to this stage, you're telling it what you need the access token to do. So, I'm just being reckless, and I'm saying that this access token will be the admin. I'm giving it all the rights that it needs, everything. I'm saying, you can do everything. But normally, you can specify your access token to do separate things. And then now you can start using different access tokens for different purposes, pretty much. So there it is. I have my token. So when you have your token, make sure you always keep it safe. Otherwise, if you don't keep it safe, you have to, come kill it and recreate it again. And if you have multiple applications that were using your token, then it means that you have to update every application that was using your token. So the easier way is just to keep your token safe. So I'll just paste that here, there. And then I'll go back. Now that I have my token, I'll go back and try to push my changes. So I'm going to go git push. It's going to ask my username. I'm going to tell you what my username is. Ask for my password, and I just pasted that token. And you see, I pasted my token for the place of my password, and then it let me do what I needed to do. And the idea is that now that you have your token in there, it should not ask you for token anymore. So now you should be able to pull and push without having to authenticate anymore. So now my changes have been pushed. If I put git log, I can see that my commit is gone, my first commit. Even git show, you can see it's showing me, when you hit git show, it's showing you what you just sent. Every change I just pushed right here. So now to verify your changes, I'll come back to my repository. So I want to go back to my repository, a GitHub repo. So this one, DevOps class. So if you notice, we have a new file here. And it says that this file was pushed 15 minutes ago. There we go. 15 minutes ago. If I open that file, I'm seeing the exact content of everything that I pushed in right here. So that's how you push changes. And now another person that pulls my repository will be able to see this new thing that I pushed. So though you're seeing it is just jargons, and when you start working, this will be actual code or anything that you're working on. This is where you're going to push it pretty much. This is how it's going to look. So that was just an example, and that's how easy it is to work with Git. Once you watch this video one more time, you'll be good to go, to be honest, And then you can just master the commands, type the command somewhere, and then you get to go. And then see, this is how you can push tags too. I don't know if we have any tags here, but I'll just list my tags. So I don't have any tags. So remember to add git tag is to git tag -a and then the tag version, which will be v.1.0.1. And then the other one was -m, was a tag message. New version is lit. So now if I listed now, I should see some tags. I have my tag there. And then to push my tag, it's telling me git push origin --tag. So oops. And you see, well, it's still asking me for authentication, which is not supposed to. So clearly there's a file here that's missing this. Usually there's a file that tracks your login. But anyway, you only do this for now. But yeah, it's still asking me for my, when I push, it's still asking me for authentication. So we're gonna fix that later. Because you don't want it asking you for authentication each time you log in. So anyway, I'm just getting my access code. I'll just paste that one more time. But yeah, access code. Now paste it in there. and it should let me push. So now I already pushed my tag. So guess what? If I come to this right now, and I hit here, now I can, do you know how, now to be able to see your different tags, this is your branch, this is your main branch, and guess what? You come to tags, and we have our tag here. And if I click this tag will always have the version that you committed to that tag. So we're looking at the tag right now, but now we can always switch from the tag to the main branch. So you see, a tag is a whole branch in itself. So you can imagine you can have 10, 20, even 30 lines here of different tags that you can just switch between whenever you want. It's just like and then here you have the different branches pretty much. So we talk about branches. So any question? So yeah, I would not recommend this anyways. But anyway, any question?
No.
Yeah, I would not recommend. Sorry.
You said you would not recommend, or what did you say?
I would not recommend you to work on the remote branch, right?
Oh,
As you notice here, you could create files here. It just makes things really dirty, and it really makes you look like a dirty engineer pretty much. You know, it's like you're taking shortcuts, you're not doing the right thing. So you just, you know, this is like trying to change the code where it's located, right? So you wanna, you know, even though you're still gonna go do the Git commit and all that stuff, but I advise you to stop, you know, avoid as an engineer working on the remote repository. Like, this is what I mean. Avoid coming here and then adding a file, you know, create a new file, you know, like, you know, test. Avoid coming here and making changes, you know, because it just looks really, cheap, you know, and, you know, except you don't want people seeing you doing this. You can do it in the back end, but yeah, it looks really cheap. So just keep that in mind. And you want to do all things from.
So basically, you can do the same thing you just did, but from the website end.
Yeah, but
But it just looks bad. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
It looks bad, and I mean, you can't really. It's not that flexible, right? How can you move files between your machine and your GitHub repo? You know, like for example, here I could easily. So we have. If I highlight my home directory, we have to view a few files there, right? I can easily move a file from my home directory. For example, I can move the DevOps. I can easily move it to my current directory, right? And then there it is. But then if you're working on your, here, you can't do all those movements and things like that. So it's not as flexible. And it also, like I said, it's cheap. So you see, you can commit directly to main, which is terrible. You know, you want to make sure that you commit from a branch. Or you can create a new branch, which is telling you a past branch and things like that too. This is how you can work from you could just create the same thing, put a commit message and commit, and you'll be like just doing the same thing. But yeah, you know, I've never seen any engineer working from here, you know, and I would not. So just keep in mind, you know, it could be a way to do a lazy editing, lazy change. If you're doing your testing, you know, if you're working in your own repo and doing your own private work, you can easily just do things from here because you know what you're doing. But when you're working in a team, just stay away from it. It's my advice. But yeah, that being said, you know, you can still do that, you know, like I showed you. And then this command is just a cheap command to see what remote branch you're in right now, or what remote branch you're going to be committing to. So if you don't know where your code is going to go to, you want to see a remote branch, this is how you version it. You know, you hit your git remote -v, and then you should be able to tell you that this is the origin. You know, and this is where you push. It's going to go to DevOps/git. And if you fetch, this is where it's going to fetch from. So yeah, it's just a command just to keep up to date to make sure you know you're in the right direction. And git fetch, as you remember, fetch copies changes from your remote to your local repository, but it doesn't copy it, you know, to your local terminal or what you're working on. So keep that in mind. It adds it to your local repository. Maybe I should bring that real quick. This right here. When you use git fetch is taking it from here to here. But your staging is still empty, your working directory, your working copy is still empty. So if I wanted my local, if I said, okay, this is the guy who has been working on a new change, another guy is working on new things that they've been updating, and I want to make sure my local repository is up to date with this, I just fetch. So what this will help you is, when you start making changes here, if you affected a file that another developer has worked on and there's a conflict, it's going to catch that conflict right here even before you make it to the remote. So it kind of helps. But then when you use git pull, it takes it from here to here and to here as well. So you have it here working on it, and you also have it here. So git pull is what I use all the time, but git fetch also has its uses, and people use it all the time. So, and then git pull, what I just talked about, it brings it to, to the entire, to your present working directory and also to your local repository. So it's like a, double S. So I like to use things that just do the work for me. So that's essentially it. We're not going to go to questions right now, but I told you we could wrap up Git today. And there's one concept that I want to talk about. We can just wrap that concept up in the next 15 to 20 minutes, or if you want to take a break, you decide. It's one other important concept I want to talk about. And then we could just wrap up Git.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
If you're working on your terminal and then you push some buttons and you just want to go back to the start, what do you do?
You mean like to the start of the file? Or the start of the what start? What exactly?
Okay. Okay, I try to add the file, the thing you told us to go and then copy and then come back and add. I try to add, but my thing just, I don't know, it's just there. And then when I try to go back to like the initial, now the origin.
Yes.
It doesn't give me anything. It just give me like, oh man.
When you type git status, what does it tell you?
It doesn't give me anything.
Well, if it doesn't give you anything, it means that probably your repository is not initialized, or you're probably not even in the correct direction.
No,
when you hit PWD, what does it tell you?
PWD. You know what? Let me try to share my screen so I can show you what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I guess, and we can try to charge that real quick and then continue with the class.
Yeah, I typed in a question in there because I downloaded my stuff today. So I think everything should be working well, but I don't know what share I'm working on. So
PWD. Oh, you don't know which share you're working on? What do you mean? Like you don't know what you're working on? Remember, PWD tells you your current direction. Is that what you're asking for? Or what we can do is, we can, Ramesh, are you going to share a screen? We can go ahead and finish the last concept that I think is really important. And then, people that want to stay can stay, and then we can address the questions. How does that sound?
yeah.
Yeah, so let's finish the last concept. So the last concept I'm going to talk about, apparently I don't have the slide here, but it's about branches or branching. So it's about Git branching. So that's an important concept. And I think that's the last concept we need to be able to get by. So Git branching, I want you to pay in mind that, to keep in mind, there won't be slides for this branching, but the video will obviously be there. It's an important concept. So with Git branching, essentially what is going on is when you have a main branch, I'll go back to that video to here. When you have this and you have your main branch, right? You don't want anybody. So this is just additional concept, which is important. So I'm adding in, not planned for, but I'm adding it because it's important for you to know. This is a main branch. So you don't expect to be making changes like I'm just doing and pushing it to that main branch. You cannot be doing that. You need a way where your other engineers can be able to look at your change and review it before you put it on the main branch, because this main branch is where everybody takes their code from. So you don't want to mess that up, right? So you cannot be making changes directly on the main branch and pushing it to the main branch. You need a way where you can work separately. And then when you're done, you can add it to the main branch. You can work on 2, 3, 4, 5 different projects, completely different projects. And you can have 5, something we call branches. And those branches are independent from each other. And when you're done, you could push that branch and then you could merge it to your main. So I'll tell you the concept. It's easy, but it's so important, and that's what we do all the time. So the way I do it and the way companies I work with, we try to set it up is on Jira, each task that you're working on. Let's say today I'm working on creating a server on AWS. I'm working on Terraform. there'll be a ticket that says this ticket is assigned to, let's say, Linus, and Linus, the task of the ticket is to create a server on AWS using Terraform. So I already know what my task is. And each ticket, when you work with a company, they're always going to have Jira or any other ticketing system. And that ticketing system is going to have the name of the ticket, and it's going to have the ticket number. And that's going to be appended to what you call your group. So your group or so for us as DevOps engineer, you're always going to have something called a DevOps bot. So I think I should Google maybe some images. So I think things are better when they're illustrated. So you have something like this. Actually, I'll go back. You have something like this called a Jira bot. And the bot, this is going to be the name of your bot. So it could be, this one is called bot, because an example, but this could be DevOps. And then each ticket that you create under this bot is going to have that DevOps as a prefix. So each ticket you create under that bot would likely have, if your bot was called DevOps, that ticket will have something like DevOps 1 for the first ticket that gets created on that bot. And every project is like this. And then it's going to keep adding 2, 3, 4, all the way to even 1,000, 2,000, depending on how many tickets you create. So what I do is I usually create branches with this bot number. And then I will link up, it's not complicated, but you link up your Jira to your Git. So now each ticket you're working on, every commit is attaching it to your ticket so you can keep it track. So anyways, but for branching, that's just how I create my branches. But you can create branches for anything you want to do. So create a branch, that's a separate branch for my master branch. So now I have LS, now in my branch, I have some files here. Some have been tracked, some have not been tracked. But now I want to create a branch off of this master branch. So you just create git checkout -b, which is for branch. And then I'll put the name of the branch. In this case, I'm going to call my branch DevOps 1. You see, it's created a new branch and it's switched to it. So if I put the command git branch, it's telling me that I'm on my DevOps branch. And this is the main branch. Okay. And also, someone's going to question that, okay, if you want to go back to your main branch, how do you do it? To go back to your main branch is git checkout, and then the name of the branch you want to switch to. It's that easy. So git checkout main is taking me back to my main branch. So if I hit git, yeah.
So what about the cd ... that takes you back to each steps you've covered?
So remember, we're working with isolated things.
Oh, okay.
Remember, we talked about staging and commit. Those are not real things, but those are things that in the back end are divided, right? So with git branch, it's the same concept. A branch is not a directory or anything. It's just different parallel versions that originate all from one place, depending on where you get it from. So for me, I did my git checkout -b. The -b was saying that I'm creating a new branch. Git checkout -b DevOps 1, what happens is I was at the main branch and I created my DevOps 1 branch. So it's going to create everything off of my main branch, right? So now I have everything in the main branch and now I can start adding on to it. So that's how developers pull out the main branch, create their own branch off of it, and they're able to work on a new feature without affecting the main branch. You get the concept?
Yes.
That's essentially what it is. So I'm going to go back. Now that I already have a branch, I'm git checkout. Remember, I'm not using the -b. The reason why I don't need the -b is because I'm not creating a new branch. I already have a branch. So I'll just put the branch name and it should take me to that branch. You see, I'm back in my branch. And with this branch, now you can do whatever you want to do. You can make changes and anything, and you're sure that you're not affecting the main branch that everyone uses, which is a very important concept. You want to stay away from the main branch as soon as possible.
So let me ask a quick question.
Yeah.
So when you say you're like tapping from the main branch, is it the same thing like tapping from the remote repository and creating?
Well, so your main branch. So when you run git fetch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember, when you run git fetch will fetch everything in your remote repository and make it available in your local repository, right? But that same thing will not be available in your local repository like what I'm working on. So that's why I will use git pull. So my advice to you is whenever you want to create a directory or you want to create a branch and you are from the main branch, right? For example, if I'm in the main branch, before I create a branch, I want to make sure that I git pull, right? What you're doing is you're updating your local repository with whatever is so recent in the master, what new guys have been working on, right? Because people, when you're in a company, people are adding changes, that you don't even know about. So when you do git pull, it makes sure you're up to date. Now you can create your branch off on an up-to-date branch, as opposed to just working with something that's not up to date. You understand? So now, once you hit git pull, your main branch is up to date. Now you create your git checkout -b, the name of your branch. Now you know that whatever I'm working on is current with master. So if I say git pull right now, I say origin, master, git pull. Oh, git is, remember, we don't use a master branch anymore, it's main. You see what it's telling me? It's telling me I'm up to date. That's because I created my branch off of the main, right? So basically everything my main has, I should have. So let's go ahead and create and add some new files. So I'm going to just add a new file. I'm just going to echo something, testing branching. I'm just adding it to a random file, branch.txt or anything like that. I'm just adding it to a random file. And now we have ls. You see, we have a new file. And if I git status, this file is not being tracked. Even my DevOps that I created in master is not being tracked. So what I want to do is I want to commit this file. So git commit -m branching concept. And then git commit -m, and then now it's been committed, right? It's still telling me that there's still some files that are on track. So it means that I need to definitely make sure that I add my files. So yeah, this is just regular. So git commit, so all my files have been committed. Now I want to push this to my remote repository, to my remote branch. So sometimes, you have to set your remote repository, but I'll just hit git push and git will tell me exactly what I need to add. So when you hit git push, git will tell you that you need to set your upstream to your branch. So I'm going to set that. Well, I'm still going to ask my username, unfortunately. I need to fix this. Usually, you don't need to do this more than once. But for the purpose of the education, now I pushed it. So now what I'm expecting is, remember, I'm still in my branch, my new branch that I created. So when I go back to my Git, right here, you see that it tells me that there's a new branch here. So now, but I want my new branch to be with master. I want it to master. I want my new code. I've tested it, is working. My new stuff is working. And I want to make sure that my new stuff is in the master branch so everybody can be able to access it. So I'm going to hit compare and pull requests. And this is the main concept of working in a team. So I want you to keep this. This is very important. This is what I'm going to say. Your pull request is what you're going to create, and you're going to add teammates. And then they're going to review your changes and then approve it. Once they approve it, now you can merge it to master, right? But I don't have any teammates, but let's say you join a company and you did your change on your branch and you pushed it, and you wanted to add a reviewer. Let's say Bajo was just part of my team. He's going to appear once I start typing because we're all in the same group. And I'll add Bajo as a reviewer. And I'll add someone else. And these are people that you want them to check your code and make sure that there's nothing there out of the ordinary. 2 eyes are better than 1, 3 eyes are better than 1. And just to make sure that you're not breaking master. Usually, even before you get here, you're going to have some tests run just to make sure everything is current. But you're going to have people look at it and going to create a pull request. That's all you do. You create something called pull request. You can go back and watch the video. This is a very important concept. There's no way you work with as a DevOps engineer without creating changes and creating a branch and then creating a pull request. This is essentially what I do every day. When I finish on a new feature, on a new code that I'm working on, a new change, I have to create a pull request and then have my teammates review it, and then I'll merge it. It's also a good way for you to show your teammates that you're actually working. When you push many pull requests, you say, man, this guy is doing the shit. Anyway, once someone comes and reviews it and likes what they see and then they approve it, now you just merge. And now when you merge, what you're doing is I'm taking that DevOps branch and I'm merging everything that I committed to my main branch. So now if I go back to my main branch, I should see that it has a new file. You see my main now has this new file. You see? So now everybody can access it. Now that's how you prevent mistakes. You make sure that you have a separate branch. And if you see here, I have 2 branches, main and I have my new branch. You know, sometimes you can delete the branch if you wanted to. And then now when I come back to my local machine, right? When I come back to my local machine, and if I ls, you see I have my file, but if I check out, if I say git checkout main, right? And I ls, I don't have that file here, my new file. This new file, I don't have it. Why is that? Can someone tell me why? Why this file is not here in my main branch? And can someone tell me how I can fix it? I just want to see if people have been paying attention.
You need to like recommit it or something?
Well, not really. I want to see if people are listening. Go ahead, someone else try. Let's see.
What's the question?
My question is, this branch, this is my main branch, right?
Yeah.
I have this file here that I added from my DevOps branch. I merged it. But when I look on this machine and I'm in the same branch, I don't see the file. What's going on?
Because you moved it?
Well, I think essentially what happened was, remember, I was working in a separate branch, right? I was working in this branch. So nothing gets merged to my main. And then I finished and I pushed and I merged it to my main master. But the master I pushed it to, let me show you. It needs to be conceptual. The master I pushed it to was this master right here. So essentially I worked on my new branch, added it, committed the changes, and then I pushed it here. And then from here, I merged it to my master branch. So my main branch here doesn't have this change. So I need to git pull.
Yeah, you have to
Yeah,
pull
remember
it.
I told you that you always
You have to pull it in order to get, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So now you're following along. So now you see git pull, and now it's updated my local repo. It's updated my local repo, and it's also updated my working repo as well. So now if I ls, I should see my branch file. You see that? So now my branch is up to date. So that's branching for you guys. And this is the foundation of teamwork on Git. So with all this knowledge you have right now, you should be able to work on Git, no problem, on the projects that we're going to do going forward. So I promise you, don't waste it this weekend. Go through this video, do all what I just did, and you'll be ready for Git. There's other commands in Git, but trust me, they're not important. The ones I just showed you is the ones that I've always used, and I've never added anything to my repertoire. So keep that in mind. So once you know how this, and you guys can say Git is a pretty cool concept, isn't it? It's amazing. So one more thing.
The company, when the company looks at your work and everybody's work, it sees what you show on the website right now, right? It sees like the board, it sees everybody's changes. They have like their own thing, right?
Yeah, if they wanted to see what everybody was doing, they will. On everything, and every commit comes with a name. You know, every commit. For example, if I go to my commits, let's see. Let's see our branch. You see? It's using my username, but you can make it use your real name. But it's saying who committed. So when you work in a company, you're going to see a bunch of names of different commits that people have done. And this is where your commit message is important. You see where your commit message is? So you have to make sure you write something smart so people know what that commit is. So I can just know what you're working on without really actually opening the entire thing to see. But anyways, that's one thing. So I think one more thing before we go is I just want to show you real quick. See, we're not even going to do 2 hours. I want to show you real quick why remember we downloaded this guy, Visual Studio, this, remember?
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you why this is what I use. This is what all my teammates use to do our daily Git and everything that we work with. And the reason why is because this is like an IDE, right? An IDE is something that will do the same thing that the terminal would do, but in a more visual format. So for example, I have this repository with all these changes here. If I wanted to work on this same repository, You know, instead of me doing the changes here and having all this complicated without even knowing what the files are, unless I do an ls, you know, that's the only time I can see the file. I could come here and clone that same repository, right? So the way you clone a repository is you come here, you hit clone, and then there you type that repository that you copied from here, right here. So if you have yours open right now, you can just follow along and then enter, and it should let you, it's going to ask you where you want to store it. So where do you want to store this file? So I'm just going to find, you know, a repository like this, a test repo, whatever it is. And then I'll just store it in there. So it's cloning. Now it's asking me, do you want to open? And I'll say, yeah, open a new window, open this current window. So I'll open this current window. So now automatically, yeah, I chose the authors. So automatically, what do we have here, guys? We have my exact code right here. We have my DevOps. We have my other file. We have my other file. You see how everything is easy to see here? So now I could come in my file and I don't even need to do a VI, right? To open a file. I can just come here and just start typing whatever I need to. You know, I have my editor already present, you know. That's how easy it is for me to change a file. And then when I'm done, I just press Command Save for Mac. Or you can still come here, you could try closing it and it's going to ask you to save it if you didn't save it. So for this file, you know, I could just come and delete, you know, I could add a line. You know, I could do whatever I need to do. You see how easy it is now to add changes to, it could be a code that you're working on. You know, I just save. If I wanted to create a new file, a Python file, right? I just come here, new file. I just right click here, new file, and I'll name that file test.py. That's a Python file right there. And I can just, you know, start at my shebang, you know, user being, you know, Python or whoever I'm using, my interpreter, and then I can just say print, you know, any message I want to print to the screen, you know, with my Python script. And then you'll be printing for me. And now I already have a new file. And that's how easy it is to type. If I needed to use, remember, if I needed to use the terminal, you know, for the same Python, I have to, you know, touch my python.y, you know, touch test.py, and then after that, I'll VI, and then start typing and do the VI, all that complicated VI. But you see how easy it is to do it from here? And then once you're done, I could commit the same changes to my repository. So, you know, I have my friends, they do all this fancy stuff that you can do it here. You know, you can commit your changes here by following, you know, you see you have your git commit, you know, you have your git add, you know, git stash and all those commands. You know, you can do everything right here. But if you're like me, that I'm old school, I don't want to use all, you can use this UI to commit and you wouldn't have to type git commit, git add and all that stuff. You see, right here, you can commit stage. This is, so commit stage should be essentially doing the -a-m using the short form. But I'll show you the way we're used to. You can also come here and you see right here, terminal, a new terminal. And it'll open you a brand new terminal, just like a Linux terminal. You could do the same thing we've been doing. You know, you can say git status and you see the new files that we just created. Remember, test par. And then since I'm a more like a Linux guy, I prefer to use this. And then I'm going to git add, git commit -m, you know, test. And then git push is the same thing. Oh, so this one is going to ask me to authenticate. So you can totally do that. It's going to open a link for you to authenticate and authorize visual code. And you're going to follow that link and authorize visual code. And when you do that, you see you're good to go. You don't have to use the token and other stuff. So you see, I did the same thing that I was doing on Ubuntu. The only difference is I can be able to do everything on the UI. It's so easy. This is my, you know, this is my README file. You know, it's so easy to create, add new files, commit. So what do you think? If I come here and I reload, I'll see my new changes. You see, my test.py is here, the new file I just created. So it does the same thing. It just makes things easier for you to track and run files. So that's it. That's the reason why I asked you to download this. And as an engineer, you want to keep this as a best friend. and just work from here and make your life easy and not have to use VI and all that stuff. So, and we can adjust the questions now. I'm just going to stop the recording just to make sure that I don't have to do any editing. And if I don't have to do any editing, I can upload this video quicker. So I'm going to stop the recording unless you want the questions to be in the recording. You just make it longer. So feel free to let me know.
No, you can stop the recording.
Address.
Okay, awesome.
Can I share my screen now?